The wine glass trembles in my hand. I'm standing in the doorway between my kitchen and dining room, holding a bottle of Pinot Noir that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Through the archway, I can see my husband Thomas holding court at our mahogany dining table, the one we bought 15 years ago when his consulting business really took off. He's telling a story. The guests are laughing. I should walk in. I should refill their glasses. I should smile and play my role. The gracious hostess, the supportive wife, the woman who makes everything look effortless. But I can't move, because I just heard what Thomas said about me. My wife reads investing books like they're romance novels, Thomas says, gesturing with his own wine glass. He's in his element tonight. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, that easy confidence that comes from 40 years of people listening when he speaks. I told her, "Susan, sweetie, understanding a recipe doesn't make you a chef." Robert Warren, the tech executive we're trying to impress, chuckles politely. His wife Elizabeth, an attorney with kind eyes, glances toward the kitchen, toward me. She knows I'm listening. Reading about something and actually doing it, those are two different things, Thomas continues. No offense to the ladies, but there's a difference between reading about real estate investing and actually having the guts to negotiate a deal, manage tenants, handle the risk. That takes a certain kind of mind. Analytical, strategic. My fingers tighten on the bottleneck. 6 months ago, those words would have made me feel small, insignificant. They would have confirmed what I'd been told my entire marriage. That I was the soft one, the impractical one, the one who needed to be protected from the harsh realities of money and business. But 6 months ago, I didn't own 3 rental properties in Portland. 6 months ago, I didn't have $85,000 in equity that my husband knew nothing about. 6 months ago, I was still hiding. I take a breath. Set down the wine bottle on the counter, smooth my navy dress, the one Thomas picked out for me last month because he said it made me look elegant for these client dinners. Then I walk into the dining room. "Thomas," I say quietly. All heads turn toward me, Robert and Elizabeth. Their silence suddenly feels thick, loaded with the weight of what they just heard. "You're absolutely right," I continue. My voice doesn't shake. It's steady, clear. After 62 years on this earth, I've finally learned how to speak without apologizing for taking up space. Reading and doing are two completely different things. Thomas smiles at me, that indulgent smile he uses when I accidentally say something at these dinners, like I'm a child who's wandered into an adult conversation. "That's what I was just saying, honey. Why don't you—" "That's why I stopped reading 18 months ago," I say. The smile freezes on his face. I started doing instead. "Let me back up. Because you need to understand how I got here, to this moment, this dinner party, this reckoning. My name is Susan Miller. I'm 62 years old. I've been married to Thomas for 40 years. We have one daughter, Julia, who's 36. By every outward measure, I have a good life. A beautiful home in Portland's West Hills neighborhood. Financial security. A husband who doesn't drink, doesn't gamble, doesn't hit. But here's what people don't see. I haven't had my own bank account in 38 years. I get an allowance of $300 a month for personal expenses. Hair appointments, clothes, birthday gifts for Julia. Everything else, groceries, household items, anything for the house, goes on our joint credit card, the one Thomas reviews every month. "Honey, did you really need to spend $42 at Barnes & Noble?" He'll ask, not unkindly. More like a gentle reminder. A patient teacher correcting a student's math homework. "Don't we have enough books already?" I used to teach English at Lincoln High School. For 20 years, I taught sophomore literature. I loved it. The discussions about To Kill a Mockingbird, the way teenagers' faces would light up when they finally understood the symbolism in The Great Gatsby. But when Julia was born, Thomas said it made sense for me to stay home. His income was higher. He was building his consulting firm. "We can afford it," he said, "and Julia needs her mother." So I quit. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back when Julia started school. Then it was middle school, then high school. I did return to teaching eventually, when Julia was 13, but Thomas never liked it. Too many evening parent-teacher conferences, too many papers to grade at home. "Why do you need to work?" he'd say. "I make plenty of money. You should be home, enjoying life." What he meant was, you should be available to manage my life. When Julia left for college at Oregon State, I was teaching again. I loved my students, But Thomas launched his campaign once more. "You're almost 60, Susan. When are you going to retire and actually relax?" So 3 years ago, at 59, I retired. And that's when I started to see things clearly. Thomas controlled everything. Our bank accounts were technically in both names, but he handled all of it. Paid all the bills, made all the investment decisions. Managed his 401k, his business accounts, everything. I had no savings of my own. No retirement beyond Social Security. The house was in both our names, but he'd paid the mortgage. His money built this life. I was just living in it, and I'd never realized it until I stopped working. Here's something Thomas would do that seemed small at the time. At night, he'd sprawl across 3/4 of our king-size bed, leaving me clinging to the edge of the mattress. If I asked him to move over, he'd mumble something about being a big guy who needed space. Or at restaurants, he'd order for me. "She'll have the salmon," he'd tell the waiter, not even glancing my way to check if that's what I wanted. Or he'd make weekend plans, golf trips, dinners with his business partners, without asking if I had anything scheduled. "What would you have scheduled?" he'd laugh. "Book club?" Yes, actually. But it didn't matter. These things felt too small to complain about. What was I going to say? "My husband orders my dinner sometimes." "He takes up too much room in bed?" Those weren't reasons to be unhappy. Those weren't abuse. But they were something. I just didn't have the language for it yet. Thomas wasn't cruel. He didn't yell or call me names. He kissed my forehead every morning before work. He brought me flowers on our anniversary. He told his colleagues I was a wonderful cook. But he also told me frequently that I wouldn't understand business matters, that I should not worry my pretty head about our retirement accounts. Pretty head. I have a college degree. I taught literature to hundreds of students over 2 decades. But to Thomas, I was decoration, a housekeeper, someone to make his life comfortable. And the worst part? I'd accepted it. For 40 years, I'd accepted it, until Julia's divorce. 2 years ago, Julia called me at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Mom," she sobbed, "I need help. I don't know what to do." Julia had married Brandon 3 years earlier. Sweet guy, we'd thought. Good job in marketing. Seemed to adore our daughter. But after the wedding, things changed. Brandon handled all their money. Every penny. Julia's paychecks went into their joint account, the one Brandon managed. If she wanted to buy groceries, she had to ask. If she wanted to visit us for Christmas, Brandon would say they couldn't afford the plane ticket. Then he'd buy himself a new truck. "I want to leave," Julia whispered into the phone that night. "But Mom, I don't have any money. I don't even have a bank account he doesn't control. How do I leave when I have nothing?" I sat in our guest bedroom, door closed so Thomas wouldn't hear, and something inside me cracked wide open. My daughter was living my life. The life I'd modeled for her, unknowingly, for 36 years. "We'll figure it out," I told her. Over the next 6 months, I helped Julia build her escape plan. I took money from my emergency cash, the $50 bills I'd saved here and there from grocery budgets, and opened a bank account for her at a different bank, one Brandon would never check. "Have your freelance design payments deposited here," I told her. "Save every penny. Don't tell him." It took 6 months, but Julia left Brandon. She's thriving now, has her own apartment in downtown Portland, a promotion at her design firm. She's happy, but helping her made me look at my own life with new eyes. Was I any different than Julia had been? Thomas didn't control me the way Brandon controlled her. Thomas was subtler, kinder even. But the result was the same. I was completely financially dependent on him. If I left tomorrow, what would I have? I did the math one sleepless night. My Social Security check was $1,200 a month. I'd started taking it early, at 62. I had maybe $3,000 in my personal checking account. No retirement savings beyond whatever half of Thomas's 401k might be worth in a divorce. That was it. That was what 40 years of marriage had left me with. I was 61 years old. What were my options? Go back to teaching? Nobody was hiring 61-year-old English teachers. Move in with Julia? Live off my daughter like some cautionary tale? The thought made me sick. But more than sick, it made me angry. Not the loud, screaming kind of angry. The quiet, determined kind. The kind that burns slow and hot and doesn't go out. I was not going to be trapped. Not anymore. The next morning, I told Thomas I was meeting my friend Kate for coffee. Instead, I went to the library. I spent 3 hours at the Multnomah County Library that first day, sitting in the computer section, searching. How to become financially independent at 60. The results were overwhelming. Stocks, bonds, starting a business. Most required either significant capital or years of building experience I didn't have. Then I found an article about real estate investing. I'd always assumed you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy property. But this article talked about something called house hacking, buying a small property, renting it out, using the rental income to cover the mortgage. It talked about building equity over time, about creating passive income. I clicked another link, then another. That afternoon, I discovered podcasts. I didn't even know what podcasts were before that day. But I downloaded an app on my phone and found one called Bigger Pockets, all about real estate investing. I listened to the first episode on the drive home, using earbuds so I could pause it quickly if Thomas called. A woman in her 50s talked about buying her first rental property with $25,000 down. She described the process step by step, finding the property, getting a loan, screening tenants. It was like she was speaking directly to me. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a student again. I listened to podcasts while Thomas was at work. I went to the library and checked out books on real estate investing through their digital service, reading them on my old Kindle that Thomas never touched. I took notes in a small journal I kept hidden in my purse. I learned about cap rates and cash-on-cash returns, the 1% rule, the BRRRR method, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, tenant screening, property management, market analysis. I was good at learning. I'd been a teacher after all. I knew how to research, how to take notes, how to master new material. But I had one massive problem: money. My $300 a month allowance wasn't going to buy property. Even if I saved every penny, it would take years to scrape together a down payment. Then one night I remembered my mother's inheritance. When Mom died 5 years ago, she left me $30,000. Thomas knew about it. I'd mentioned it at the time. But in the chaos after her funeral, dealing with her belongings and the estate, I deposited that money into an old savings account I'd had since before we were married. An account I'd forgotten about until I was cleaning out files. Thomas had assumed I'd moved that money into our joint account. He'd never asked, and I'd never corrected him. I logged into the old account online. My hands were shaking. Balance, $29,847.23. That money was mine. Legally, completely mine. Inherited money, kept in a separate account. I sat in my car outside the library, staring at that number on my phone screen, and made a decision. I was going to buy a rental property. I was going to do it without telling Thomas. And I was going to prove, to myself, if no one else, that I was capable of more than making a beautiful home and being a wonderful hostess. The guilt hit me immediately. Was this lying? Was this betraying my marriage? But then I remembered Julia's voice on the phone. Mom, I don't have anything of my own. I thought about the last 40 years, about every time Thomas had patted my hand and said don't worry about it when I asked about our finances. Every time he'd reviewed my credit card statement like I was a teenager asking for an advance on allowance. Every time he'd made me feel like wanting to understand our money was somehow inappropriate. I looked at that $29,847.23 one more time. Then I called a real estate agent whose name I'd found in a podcast for women investors. My name is Susan, I said when she answered, and I need to be discreet. My husband can't know I'm doing this. There was a pause. Then, honey, you're not the first woman who's called me saying that. Let's talk. Her name was Jennifer Hayes. She was 52, divorced, and she understood exactly what I was doing. We'll communicate by email, Jennifer said. You set up a new account your husband doesn't know about. We'll meet at coffee shops, never near your house. And Susan? Yes? You're doing the right thing. Every woman deserves to know she can take care of herself. I hung up and sat in my car for 20 minutes crying. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt like hope. That night, Thomas asked how my coffee with Kate was. Good, I said. We talked about the book club's next selection, Pride and Prejudice. It wasn't entirely a lie. I'd stopped at Barnes & Noble on the way home and bought a copy, just in case he asked details. But mostly, I'd spent the afternoon planning my escape from a cage I'd been living in for 40 years. I just didn't know yet that Thomas had been living in a cage of his own. Jennifer Hayes met me at a coffee shop in southeast Portland, 15 miles from my house. Far enough that I'd never run into Thomas's colleagues or our neighbors. She was waiting at a corner table when I arrived, laptop open, professional but warm. Salt and pepper hair cut in a sharp bob, confident smile. "Susan," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Tell me what you're looking for." I'd prepared for this. Spent a week researching Portland neighborhoods, rental rates, property values. I pulled out my notebook, the one I kept hidden in my purse. "Small single-family home or duplex," I said. "Good rental area, under $150,000 if possible. I have $25,000 for a down payment." Jennifer studied my notes. "You've done your homework." "I was a teacher. I know how to study." She smiled. "The women who succeed at this are always the ones who do the research first. Let me guess, your husband thinks you're incapable of understanding this?" My throat tightened. "How did you know?" "Because the women who call me in secret, they're always the smartest, most capable women I meet. They just married men who needed them to stay small." She closed her laptop. "We're going to find you a property, Susan, and we're going to do it right." Over the next month, Jennifer became more than my real estate agent. She became my teacher. She explained things Thomas probably thought I'd never understand. How to analyze a deal, what to look for in an inspection report, how to calculate cash-on-cash returns. "This duplex here," she'd say, pointing at a listing. "It's listed at $145,000. Both units currently rented at $850 each. That's $1,700 a month gross rent. Your mortgage, taxes, and insurance would run about $1,200. Property management takes 10%, so $170. You're looking at roughly $330 a month net positive cash flow." I wrote everything down, studied it at night when Thomas was asleep. My friend Kate was the only person who knew what I was doing. We'd been friends for 20 years, met at a PTA meeting when Julia was in 3rd grade. Kate's husband had died 8 years ago, leaving her to figure out all their finances alone. "I wish I'd learned this stuff while Bill was alive," Kate told me one afternoon as we sat in her car outside a property I was considering. "He handled everything. When he died, I didn't even know where our insurance policies were." "Thomas handles everything too," I said quietly. Kate turned to look at me. "Susan, what you're doing, it's not just smart. It's necessary. Every woman should have her own money, her own options." I feel guilty, like I'm lying to him. "Has he ever lied to you?" I started to say no, then stopped, because Thomas hadn't lied exactly, but he'd never told me the full truth about our finances either. He'd kept me in the dark, dismissed my questions, made me feel foolish for wanting to know. "That's different," I finally said. "Is it?" Kate squeezed my hand. "You're not doing anything wrong, Susan. You're just taking care of yourself. That's not betrayal. That's survival." I needed to hear that. Needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, wasn't selfish, wasn't a bad wife for wanting something of my own. The third person in my network was David Park, a mortgage broker Jennifer recommended. David specialized in what he called creative financing, helping people who didn't fit traditional lending boxes. "You don't have recent income," David said at our first meeting, reviewing my financial situation. "But you do have Social Security. That's $1,200 a month, correct?" "Yes." "And you have assets, the inheritance money. For an investment property loan, we can use your Social Security income plus the projected rental income to qualify you. The interest rate will be higher than a primary residence, probably around 5.5%, but it's doable." "My husband can't know about this," I said. "The loan needs to be in my name only." David had heard this before too. He didn't even blink. "Your inheritance is separate property. The loan will be in your name only. Your husband won't be on the deed, won't be liable for the mortgage. This is completely separate from your marital assets." Legal, legitimate, mine. It took 4 months to find the right property. Jennifer sent me listings through my secret Gmail account, email protected, which I only checked on my phone or at the library. I'd told Thomas I joined a book club that met Thursday evenings. That gave me 3 hours a week to handle real estate business. Kate covered for me. If Thomas ever called her, she knew to say, "Oh yes, Susan just left book club. Great discussion tonight." We looked at 17 properties. Some were in terrible neighborhoods. Some needed too much work. Some were overpriced. Then Jennifer sent me a listing for a small house in the Woodlawn neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, built in 1948. Needed cosmetic work, new carpet, fresh paint, updated kitchen appliances, but the bones were solid. The seller was motivated, asking $128,000. "I can get them down to $118,000, Jennifer said. "Maybe lower." We walked through it on a Thursday evening. The house was empty, had been a rental before. Hardwood floors under the old carpet. Good roof. Plumbing and electrical had been updated 10 years ago. I stood in the small living room and tried to imagine it. A young couple living here, or a single parent. Someone starting out, like I was starting over. "What do you think?" Jennifer asked. I think I can do this," Jennifer smiled. "I think so too." She negotiated the price down to $118,000. With $25,000 down, closing costs, and $4,000 set aside for repairs, I'd have just enough left over for an emergency fund. The loan process was terrifying. I met with David at his office, again on a Thursday book club night. Signed document after document. Went through the inspection, the appraisal, all of it without Thomas knowing. Every time my phone rang, I was terrified it would be Thomas somehow finding out. Every time I came home late from a book club meeting, I worried he'd question me too closely. But Thomas never suspected. Why would he? I was just Susan, reading her little books, seeing her friends, not capable of actually doing anything significant. The closing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Thomas was at a client meeting in Seattle, wouldn't be back until evening. I sat in the title company office, Kate beside me for moral support. The title officer walked me through the final documents. "Sign here, and initial here." My hand shook as I signed my name. Susan Miller. Over and over. On the deed. On the mortgage. On documents that made this property mine. "Congratulations, Mrs. Miller," the title officer said, handing me the keys. "You're a property owner." I held those keys in my hand, 2 small brass keys on a ring, and started crying. Kate hugged me. "You did it. You actually did it. I owned something. Not me and Thomas. Just me. For the first time in 40 years, I had an asset in my name only." That night at dinner, Thomas asked about my day. "Oh, quiet," I said. "Ran some errands. Had lunch with Kate." "That's nice, honey." He barely looked up from his phone, scrolling through work emails. He had no idea that earlier that day his wife had become a landlord. I couldn't manage the property myself. Too risky that Thomas would find out. So I hired Riverside Property Management, a company Jennifer recommended. Grace Thompson, the property manager, met me at a Starbucks to go over the agreement. "We handle everything," Grace explained, listing the property, screening tenants, collecting rent, coordinating repairs. "You get a monthly statement via email showing all income and expenses. We take 10% of the monthly rent as our fee." "And the tenants never contact me directly?" "Never. Everything goes through us. As far as they know, we're the owners." Grace paused. "Can I ask why the secrecy?" I'd prepared an answer. "My husband and I have different investment philosophies. This is my separate property, and I'd prefer to manage it independently." Grace nodded slowly. She understood the subtext. "Your secret's safe with us." Within 2 weeks, the house was rented. A young couple, Michael and Amy Chen, both nurses at Legacy Emmanuel Hospital. They loved the house, had excellent credit, made 3 times the monthly rent in combined income. Rent, $1,050 a month. After the mortgage, $680, property taxes, $150, insurance, $80, and Grace's management fee, $105. I cleared $35 a month. $35. I stared at the first monthly statement in disbelief. I'd spent months researching, planning, agonizing over this investment. And my net profit was $35? I called Kate, almost in tears. "This was a mistake. After all that work, I'm making $35 a month. That's nothing." "It's not nothing," Kate said firmly. "You're building equity. Every mortgage payment, Michael and Amy are paying down your principal. Plus, the property will appreciate. This is a long-term investment, not a lottery ticket. She was right. I knew she was right. Jennifer had explained this. The real money in real estate comes from equity buildup and appreciation, not immediate cash flow. But still, $35 felt like a disappointment. Until I got the mortgage statement 3 months later and saw that I now had $2,100 in equity that I didn't have before. The property had also appreciated $3,000 in value, according to Zillow. That's when it clicked. I wasn't making $35 a month. I was building wealth. Slowly, steadily, invisibly. And Thomas had no idea. Maintaining the secret became its own kind of job. I checked my secret Gmail only on my phone, never on the desktop computer Thomas and I shared. I kept all property documents in a folder hidden in my car trunk under the spare tire. I told Thomas I was volunteering at the library on Tuesday afternoons. Really, I was meeting with Jennifer to look at more properties. The lies piled up. Small ones, mostly, but they accumulated. Book club ran late. Kate needed help organizing her garage. I'm reading at the library. It's quieter than home. Every lie made me feel guilty, but every lie also felt necessary. Julia noticed the change in me before anyone else. "Mom, you seem different lately," she said one Sunday when she came over for dinner. We were in the kitchen, away from Thomas. "Happier." "Do I?" "Yeah, more confident or something. It's nice." I wanted to tell her, wanted to share what I was doing, but I wasn't ready yet. If Julia knew, she might accidentally mention something to Thomas, or she might try to talk me out of it, worried about the risks. So I kept quiet. Even with my daughter, the strangest part was watching Thomas during this time. He genuinely thought our life was perfect. He'd whistle while making his morning coffee, kiss my forehead before leaving for work, talk about the trip to Hawaii he was planning for our anniversary. "Won't that be nice?" he'd say. 2 weeks in Maui. You can relax by the pool, read your books. I'll play some golf." He actually thought he was being a good husband, providing for me, taking care of me. He had no idea I was taking care of myself. 8 months after buying the first property, I had a crisis. The water heater died. $2,200 to replace. I'd built up some reserves, about $1,000 from the $35 monthly cash flow, plus some money I'd scraped together from my allowance. But I was $1,200 short. I sat in my car outside the library, panicking. I couldn't ask Thomas for money, couldn't pull it from our joint account. I was going to lose everything because of a stupid water heater. Then Kate called. "How much do you need?" "Kate, I can't." "How much, Susan?" $1,200. "But I'll pay you back, I promise." "I know you will. I'm transferring it right now," I cried. "Thank you. This is what friends do. We help each other survive our marriages." That night, I paid for a new water heater. The tenants never even lost hot water for a full day, and I learned a critical lesson. I needed bigger reserves, needed to be more conservative with my projections. Real estate investing wasn't just about the numbers. It was about expecting problems and preparing for them. 1 year after buying the first property, something remarkable happened. The house had appreciated to $135,000 according to the appraisal. I had nearly $30,000 in equity from appreciation, mortgage paydown, and the original down payment. Jennifer explained the cash-out refinance. You can pull out some of that equity as cash. Use it as a down payment on property number 2. "Is that legal?" She laughed. "Completely legal. It's called leveraging your assets. This is how real estate investors build portfolios." I refinanced, pulled out $17,000 in equity. Combined with the rental income I'd saved plus money from my allowance, I had $25,000 for another down payment. Property number 2 was a duplex in Brentwood, Darlington. Purchase price, $145,000. Both units rented for $850 each. After all expenses, I netted $300 a month. 6 months later, I bought property number 3, a single-family home in the Cully neighborhood for $132,000. Rented for $1,000 a month. Net, $175 monthly. By the time I turned 62, I had 3 rental properties generating $510 a month total in net cash flow. More importantly, I had equity, real tangible wealth, of approximately $85,000. I checked my secret Gmail one Thursday evening and saw the latest statements from Grace. 3 properties, 3 sets of tenants, 3 monthly checks being deposited into my secret bank account. I'd done it. I'd built something. Not with Thomas's help, not with his permission. Just me, my mother's inheritance, and 18 months of quiet, determined work. That night at dinner, Thomas talked about one of his clients. "This guy thinks he understands business strategy," Thomas said, shaking his head. I had to explain to him. I let him talk, nodded at appropriate moments, served dessert, and thought about how in 3 days I'd be meeting with Jennifer to look at a potential 4th property. Thomas had no idea that his wife, the one he'd told not to worry her pretty head about business, had built an $85,000 net worth portfolio while he wasn't looking. But he was about to find out. The email from Jennifer came on a Tuesday morning, 1 week before Thomas's dinner party. I was at the library, my usual spot, checking my secret Gmail on one of the public computers. The subject line read, FYI, interesting info about Woodlawn property. "Susan, something came up during a title search I was doing for another client. The seller you bought your Woodlawn property from? His name is marked in public records as a business partner with someone named Thomas Miller. Same address as you. I'm guessing that's your husband? Might be a coincidence, but thought you should know. Jennifer." My hands went cold. Thomas knew the person who sold me my first property? That seemed like too much of a coincidence for Portland's real estate market. I spent the next 3 hours digging through public records online. Property tax databases, business registrations, LLC filings. And that's when I found it. Miller Holdings LLC, registered 8 years ago. Owner, Thomas Miller. 2 properties listed under the LLC, 1 in Gresham, 1 in Beaverton. My husband owned rental properties. Properties he'd never mentioned to me. Not once in 8 years. I sat back in the library chair, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, trying to process this. All those times Thomas had lectured me about women not understanding investments. All those times he'd dismissed my questions about our finances. All those times he'd made me feel foolish for reading books about real estate. And he'd been running his own rental portfolio the entire time. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive home and confront him. But instead, I kept digging. The properties were purchased 8 years ago, right after Thomas's mother died. He'd told me his mother lost everything to bad investments, that she died nearly broke, that it was a cautionary tale about why we needed to be careful with money. But property records don't lie. Thomas's mother, Margaret Miller, had owned 3 rental properties in Portland. When she died, those properties went to Thomas. He sold 1 and kept 2, transferring them into his LLC. I found tax records showing rental income. Over 8 years, Thomas had collected approximately $240,000 in gross rental income. Even accounting for expenses, that meant he'd probably netted $150,000 or more. Money he'd never told me about. I drove home in a daze, pulled into our driveway, sat in the car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. For 18 months, I'd felt guilty. Guilty for hiding my properties. Guilty for lying about book club. Guilty for keeping secrets from my husband. But Thomas had been keeping bigger secrets from me for 8 years. That night at dinner, I watched him differently. He talked about his day, about a difficult client, about plans to upgrade his golf clubs. He kissed my cheek when he got up to refill his water glass, and I thought, I don't know you at all. "Thomas," I said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "When your mother died, did she leave you anything? I know you said she'd lost everything, but—" His face hardened, just for a second. Then he smiled. "We've been through this, Susan. Mom made some terrible investments. Lost the house. There was barely enough for the funeral." He lied so smoothly, so easily. "Right," I said. I just wondered. That night, while Thomas slept, I went into his home office. The one room in the house he'd always said was off limits because it had confidential client information. I'd respected that boundary for 40 years. Not anymore. I found the file in his filing cabinet under MH Investments. Financial statements, tenant leases, property tax bills, everything about his secret rental properties. But there was something else in that file. Documents about his mother's estate, the will, the property transfers. Margaret Miller hadn't lost everything. She'd been a successful real estate investor. She'd tried to teach Thomas about it. There were even old letters. Margaret writing to Thomas about building generational wealth and learning to manage properties. Thomas had learned all right. Then he'd created a completely different story about her. But why? I kept reading. Found old family letters. One from Thomas's sister, Rachel, dated 9 years ago. Thomas, I can't believe you took Mom's estate money without telling me. She wanted us to split everything equally. You know that. The fact that you hid $50,000 and claimed there was nothing left is unforgivable. Don't contact me again. Rachel Thomas had stolen from his own sister, had lied about their mother's legacy, had built his rental portfolio partly with money that should have been split with Rachel. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, hands shaking. My husband wasn't just controlling. He was a liar, a thief, and he'd spent 8 years telling me that women couldn't handle investments while he secretly ran his own portfolio. The guilt I'd carried for 18 months evaporated. I was done hiding. Which brings us back to the dinner party. Robert and Elizabeth Warren sit at our dining table, wine glasses half full, looking increasingly uncomfortable as I stand in the doorway. You started doing what? Thomas asks. His smile is still there, but his eyes are confused. I walk fully into the room, set my wine glass down on the table with a soft click. 18 months ago, I bought my first rental property, I say clearly. A 2-bedroom house in Woodlawn. I've since purchased 2 more. A duplex in Brentwood, Darlington, and a single-family home in Cully. The silence in the room is absolute. Thomas laughs, uncertainly. Susan, what are you talking about? This isn't funny. I'm not joking. I pull out my phone, open the property management app, slide it across the table to Elizabeth. That's my portfolio dashboard. 3 properties, 6 tenants, approximately $510 in monthly net cash flow. Elizabeth picks up the phone, studies the screen. Her eyes widen. Susan, this is actually impressive. Robert leans over to look. Your cash-on-cash returns are solid, and you're in good neighborhoods. Well done. Thomas snatches my phone from them, stares at the screen. His face goes through several emotions, confusion, disbelief, then something that looks like betrayal. How did you... He can't finish the sentence. My mother's inheritance, I say calmly. The $30,000 she left me 5 years ago. I used it as down payments. I got investment property loans in my name only. I've been managing them through a property management company. You went behind my back. Thomas's voice is tight. No, I say. I managed my own assets. The same way you've been managing your assets. His face pales. What are you talking about? Miller Holdings, LLC, I say quietly. Your 2 rental properties in Gresham and Beaverton. The ones you've owned for 8 years. The ones you never told me about. You could hear a pin drop. Robert and Elizabeth exchange glances. This dinner party has become something else entirely. Thomas stands abruptly. I think we should end the evening. Your mother didn't lose everything to bad investments, I continue. My voice is steady, stronger than I've ever heard it. She was a successful real estate investor. She left you 3 properties. You sold 1 and kept 2. You told me she died broke, but she actually left you a substantial estate. Susan, Thomas's voice carries a warning. You also took $50,000 that should have gone to your sister Rachel. That's why she hasn't spoken to you in 9 years. You stole from your own family and then lectured me about women not understanding investments while you ran a secret rental business. Elizabeth sets down her wine glass carefully. I think we should go. Actually, I say, there's one more thing you should know. I filed for divorce 3 days ago. Thomas will be served papers tomorrow morning. Thomas's face goes purple. You what? I look directly at him. I filed for divorce. My attorney will contact you about asset division, including full disclosure of Miller Holdings, LLC. This is insane. Thomas slams his hand on the table. The wine glasses jump. We've been married 40 years. You can't just... For 40 years, you've controlled every aspect of our finances while running secret investments, I say. You made me feel stupid for wanting to understand money while you were doing exactly what you told me I was incapable of. You didn't just dismiss me, Thomas. You gaslit me. Elizabeth stands, pulling Robert with her. We're going to leave you 2 to discuss this privately. No, please. Thomas's voice is desperate now. Stay. Susan's not well. She's clearly having some kind of... I'm perfectly well, I say. I'm just done being controlled. I turn to Robert and Elizabeth. I apologize for ruining your evening. The food is paid for. You're welcome to stay and finish if you'd like. I'm going to my daughter's apartment. I'd already packed a bag. It was in my car trunk, waiting. I walk out of that dining room, out of that house, into my car. My hands shake as I start the engine, but I drive away. Away from 40 years of being small. Away from a man who loved me like property, not a partner. Toward my daughter's apartment, where she's waiting up with wine and open arms. You did it, Julia says when I walk through her door. She hugs me so tight I can barely breathe. Mom, you actually did it. I did, I whisper. And for the first time in 40 years, I sleep without Thomas taking up 3/4 of the bed. The next morning, a process server delivers divorce papers to Thomas at his office. He calls me 47 times in 3 hours. I don't answer. Finally, a text. We need to talk. This is insane. I love you. I text back. Have your attorney contact mine, Rebecca Chen at Chen & Associates. Rebecca is exactly who I need, recommended by Jennifer, experienced in high net worth divorces involving hidden assets. Smart woman, Rebecca says when we meet. She's in her 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Your properties are separate property, purchased with inheritance money before disclosure to your spouse. He can't touch them. What about his properties? Those are marital assets, purchased during the marriage with marital funds, probably income from his business. You're entitled to half. The divorce proceedings are brutal. Thomas's attorney paints me as deceptive, mentally unstable, hiding assets. The irony would be funny if it weren't so painful. But during discovery, Rebecca's forensic accountant uncovers everything. Miller Holdings LLC has 4 properties, not 2. Thomas had hidden 2 more purchases from even his own business records. Total equity in his portfolio, $380,000. There's also a suspicious pattern of transfers to an offshore account. Not illegal, but ethically questionable. Money that should have been reported to the IRS. And then the bombshell. The forensic accountant confirms what I found. Thomas took $50,000 from his mother's estate that should have been split with his sister. In his deposition, Rebecca destroys him. Mr. Miller, you testified that women are risk-averse and shouldn't invest independently. Yet you hid $380,000 in property investments from your wife. Can you explain that discrepancy? Thomas shifts in his seat. I was protecting our assets, building our retirement. By hiding them from your wife? She wouldn't have understood. She wouldn't have understood. Or you didn't want her to have any financial independence? Silence. Mr. Miller, did you or did you not take $50,000 from your mother's estate without informing your sister, Rachel Miller? His attorney objects, but the damage is done. After 6 months of fighting, Thomas agrees to settle. The mediation happens in a sterile conference room. Thomas and his attorney on one side, Rebecca and me on the other. A mediator at the head of the table. Thomas looks tired, older. He won't meet my eyes. My client proposes the following settlement. Thomas's attorney begins. 50-50 split of marital assets. Mrs. Miller keeps her 3 properties as separate property. Mr. Miller keeps his 4 properties as separate property. No, Rebecca says flatly. Excuse me? Mr. Miller's properties were purchased with marital funds during the marriage. They're marital property. Mrs. Miller is entitled to half their value. 3 hours of negotiation. Back and forth. Numbers on spreadsheets. Finally, we break for lunch. Thomas asks to speak with me privately. Rebecca starts to object, but I nod. It's okay. We stand in the hallway, alone for the first time since the dinner party. Susan, Thomas says quietly, did you ever love me? The question catches me off guard. I expect anger, accusations. Not this. I loved who I thought you were, I say honestly. I grieved that man for 40 years. He never actually existed. I thought I was protecting you. No, you weren't. I'm not angry anymore, just tired. You were protecting yourself from having an equal partner, from having a wife who might not need you. Is that really so terrible? Wanting to be needed? When you make someone small so you can feel big? Yes, Thomas, that's terrible. He looks at his shoes. I learned it from my dad. He controlled everything in our house. My mom fought back by investing in real estate behind his back. When she died, I swore I'd never be like him, but I swore I'd never be like her either. Absent, distracted, always thinking about properties instead of family. So I just became both of them. It's the most honest thing he's ever said to me. I hope you get help, I say. I really do, but I can't be part of your healing process. We go back in, sign the settlement. I walk away with a $450,000 from marital assets, house sale, his 401k, disclosed accounts. My 3 rental properties, worth approximately $400,000 with $85,000 in equity. A check for $25,000, my share of what Thomas owes Rachel. What's this? Thomas asks when he sees that last item. Some debts aren't financial, I say. Call your sister. 10 months after the divorce finalizes, I'm at a coffee shop working on my laptop, budgeting for property number 4, another duplex I'm considering. The bell above the door chimes. I look up. Thomas walks in with a woman, younger, maybe mid-40s. Loud laugh. She's talking animatedly. Our eyes meet. For a moment, neither of us moves. Then Thomas approaches my table. The woman hangs back, uncertain. Susan, you look good. I am good. Can I? He gestures to the empty chair. I nod. He sits. Awkward silence. I've been in therapy, he says finally. Twice a week for the past 8 months. That's good, Thomas. I hope it's helping. It is. I'm learning about control issues, about why I needed to keep you dependent. He looks at his hands. My therapist says I was terrified, of being like my mom, absent, obsessed with properties, of being alone, of not being needed. I wait. I made you small so I could feel big, he says. That's what my therapist said. I made you small, and I'm sorry, Susan. I'm genuinely sorry. I believe him. I can see it in his eyes. Real regret, real growth. Thank you for saying that, I tell him. It doesn't change what happened, but I believe you mean it. Do you think... He stops, starts again. Could we ever... is there any chance? No, Thomas. His face falls. But I don't hate you, I continue. I did for a while. Then I just felt sad for you. Now I mostly feel... nothing. And that's how I know I'm healed. He nods slowly. I understand. I hope you find peace, I say. I really do. I hope you build a healthy relationship with that woman. I hope you call Rachel and apologize. I hope you become the person you should have been. We shake hands. He leaves. I sit there for a long moment, watching him walk out the door. Then I text Julia. Just ran into your father. He apologized. I accepted. And I still don't want him back. Julia responds immediately. That's called healing, Mom. Proud of you. I realize something profound. I don't hate Thomas anymore. I pity him. His cage was always smaller than mine, built from his father's cruelty and his mother's absence, reinforced by 40 years of fear. The real victory isn't revenge. It's indifference. It's being able to wish someone well and mean it, while still knowing you're better off without them. 6 months later, I'm on my condo balcony. Small place, 2 bedrooms, mine completely. No mortgage. Julia's inside making us dinner. She insists on cooking for me now, says I did it for 40 years and deserve a break. I'm reviewing an offer on property number 4. Another duplex, this time in the St. John's neighborhood. The numbers work. My portfolio will generate $1,200 a month in net cash flow once this closes. Combined with my Social Security and dividends from the settlement funds I invested in index funds, I have $4,200 a month. More than enough. But the money isn't even the point anymore. The point is, it's mine. My decisions, my risks, my victories, my mistakes. Julia comes out with 2 plates of pasta. Dinner's ready. We eat on the balcony, watching the Portland sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Mom, Julia says, do you regret the 40 years? I think about it. Really think. I regret not starting sooner, I say finally. But those years gave me you. They taught me what I'm capable of surviving. They showed me who I don't want to be. Do you ever miss him? I miss who I thought he was, but that person never existed. So really, I'm just grieving a fantasy. Julia squeezes my hand. You're my hero, you know that? I laugh. I'm just a 63-year-old woman who bought some rental properties. No, you're a 63-year-old woman who saved herself. Later, after Julia leaves, I open my laptop. My women's investment group meets tomorrow. We're up to 31 members now, women aged 50 to 75, all learning real estate investing. Last week, Helen, a 64-year-old retired nurse, closed on her first duplex. She called me crying with joy. "I never thought I could do this," she'd said. "You can," I told her. "You absolutely can. I think about writing my story down. Not for publication, just for me, for Julia, for the women in my group who need to know it's never too late." I open a new document, type a title, The Silent Landlord. Then I begin. The house was quiet, too quiet. I sat in our small guest bedroom, the door closed, my reading lamp dimmed to barely a glow. Outside my window, Portland lights twinkle in the growing dark. Somewhere in this city, Thomas is probably having dinner with his girlfriend. Julia's probably video chatting with the woman she's been dating. Kate's probably reading on her own balcony. And I'm here, in my own space, building my own life, on my own terms. At 63, I finally learned the most important investment isn't in real estate or stocks or bonds. It's in yourself, and that investment pays dividends forever.